How has the right to property evolved in India? And what implications do recent Supreme Court judgments have on this evolution? The right to property in India has evolved significantly from being a fundamental right to a constitutional guarantee, and recent judicial developments have further shaped its contours. This transformation highlights the interplay between constitutional amendments and judicial interpretations, reflecting a balancing act between individual rights and state interests. In this video, we examine the evolution of property rights in India, the role of constitutional amendments, and the impact of recent Supreme Court judgments on this fundamental aspect of Indian democracy. Historical context and constitutional provisions. The framers of the Indian Constitution initially recognized property rights as a fundamental right under Article 19(1)(f), which guaranteed the right to acquire, hold, and dispose of property. However, the scope of this right was not absolute. It was subject to reasonable restrictions imposed by the state in the interest of public welfare, as envisaged by Article 19(5). Additionally, Article 31 provided for the protection of property against deprivation except by the authority of law. This framework reflected a clear intent to safeguard property rights while allowing for state intervention in the broader interests of society. The first major shift, the 44th Amendment 1978. A landmark moment in the evolution of property rights came with the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1978, which significantly altered the status of the right to property. The amendment removed Article 19(1)(f), thereby no longer treating property as a fundamental right. Instead, it relegated the right to property to a constitutional right under Article 300(a), which states that no person shall be deprived of his property save by authority of law. This change reflected a policy shift in the post-emergency era, where the government sought greater regulatory control over property matters, particularly land reforms and urban development. The shift indicated a prioritization of social justice and economic equity over individual property rights, especially in the context of land redistribution and other welfare initiatives. Judicial interpretations and shifting judicial views. The shift in the constitutional framework led to a series of judicial interpretations that have further refined the scope of property rights in India. First, the Kasturi Lal case, 1959. The Supreme Court ruled that the right to property under Article 19(1)(f) was not absolute and could be subjected to reasonable restrictions. The case emphasized that property rights must be balanced with the broader public interest. 2. Second, the Golaknath case, 1967. The court held that the Parliament could not amend the fundamental rights to change the essential structure of the Constitution, which included property rights. This judgment was pivotal in asserting the sanctity of fundamental rights against legislative interference. 3. Third, the Maneka Gandhi case, 1978. This judgment introduced a more expansive interpretation of Article 21, right to life and personal liberty, linking it to the right to live with dignity. It reinforced that property rights, though no longer fundamental, still merited judicial protection, particularly when they intersected with other human rights. Fourth, the 1979 land reforms and nationalization cases. The court repeatedly upheld state intervention in land reforms, nationalization, and acquisition laws, reflecting the tension between individual property rights and the state's welfare mandate. These decisions laid the foundation for future jurisprudence where the economic and social justice dimension would often override property rights. Fifth, the NDMC vs. Girdharilal 1998 case. In this case, the court ruled that the state could impose restrictions on property rights in the interest of public health and safety, reinforcing the view that property rights are not sacrosanct when public welfare is at stake. Recent developments are changing judicial perspective. In recent years, the Supreme Court has made some landmark decisions that have significantly impacted the understanding and application of property rights in India. The right to shelter and the slum rehabilitation judgments. The Supreme Court has broadened the scope of property rights by connecting it to the broader right to life and dignity under Article 21. In cases related to slum rehabilitation and eviction, such as the Shah Bano Case 1985 and Mumbai Slum Redevelopment Scheme 2017, the court stressed that the right to shelter is an integral part of the right to life. This interpretation links property rights to the human right to dignity and sustenance, reinforcing that property rights cannot be divorced from the socio-economic context. The Land Acquisition Act Case 2014. In Government of National Capital Territory Delhi vs. Ramesh Arora 2014, the Supreme Court addressed the application of the right to fair compensation and transparency in Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act 2010. The judgment balanced the right of the state to acquire land for public purposes with the rights of affected landowners, emphasizing fair compensation and rehabilitation measures. This case highlights the importance of protecting property rights while ensuring that land acquisition serves larger public interests, especially in urbanization and infrastructure development. The Ganges Pollution Case 2017. In MC Mehta vs. Union of India 2017, the Supreme Court demonstrated an evolving approach to property rights in relation to environmental protection. The court placed restrictions on industrial activities that threatened the Ganges River, acknowledging that property rights could be curtailed in the larger interest of environmental preservation and public health. This marked a shift toward understanding property rights in conjunction with environmental sustainability. Lastly, implications and future directions. The evolution of property rights in India reflects a complex and ongoing struggle between individual freedoms and collective welfare. The initial constitutional recognition of property as a fundamental right was modified by the 44th Amendment, which downgraded it to a constitutional right. This shift, however, was not the end of the debate on property rights. Judicial interpretations over the years have broadened the scope of property rights, ensuring that they adapt to changing socio-economic realities. Recent Supreme Court judgments underscore the growing recognition that property rights must coexist with social justice, environmental protection, and the right to dignity. The court has increasingly emphasized that property cannot be viewed in isolation from the broader constitutional values, particularly the welfare of vulnerable populations and the environment. Looking forward, property rights in India will likely continue to evolve, with the courts playing a pivotal role in shaping their boundaries. The challenge will be to balance the rights of individuals with the needs of society, ensuring that property laws promote equitable development, social justice, and sustainable growth. Activity for you. Do you think the transformation of property rights in India from a fundamental right to a constitutional right has led to greater social justice or economic inequality? Discuss with examples.